It is time now for our Common Ground segment. Joining us tonight are two members of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Florida Democratic Congressman Jared Moskowitz and Republican Congressman from New York, Mike Lawler. Thank you both for being here. One of the things that you have common ground on is a new piece of legislation. It's called the SHIP Act legislation, Stop Harboring Iranian Petroleum. Basically a policy statement that the U.S. should deny Iran the ability to engage in destabilizing activities, imposes sanctions against entities that engage in illicit Iranian oil trade, and report on Iranian petroleum exports. Congressman Moskowitz, why is this important and why now?
Well, first, Bret, thanks for having us. Common Ground is obviously extremely important, and we can find that here in fighting Iran. And so what's going on is this closes a loophole that right now Iran and their funders are using to get Iranian oil and for the regime to make money. So this will put additional sanctions, as you mentioned, on ports and refineries. And as we saw, Iran is using that money, mostly that they're getting from China, to use as a destabilizing force. They're helping out, obviously, Russia by supplying drones. And just lately, Israel had to go into Jenin to work on the fact that Iran is continuing to fund Hamas's actions there.
Congressman Lawler, it's really amazing, the export numbers. If you look at revenues, Iran net oil export revenues, 2020, $15 billion, 2021, $40 billion. Reuters has this piece that it's a 5-year high. Sanctions are in place, but perhaps they're not fully implemented or monitored. Goes on to say, even as the Biden team is kind of negotiating nuclear talks. Why is this important, and how do you get common ground on this in Congress?
Well, there's no question that Iran, China, North Korea, Russia have engaged in an unholy alliance that certainly is focused on destabilizing and undermining the United States and our allies. And while the United States has sanctions in place against Iranian petroleum, many of our allies and many of our adversaries do not. And so it's critically important that we put in place additional sanctions on those who would use Iranian petroleum or seek to refine it or transport it through ports and vessels, and put sanctions in place that would hold them accountable.
Congressman Moskowitz, the Iranian oil exports to China, you mentioned China. They are a beneficiary of this. If you look at this chart, it's pretty amazing to see the second highest pace really since 2017 for Iranian oil to be going to China. There is common ground also on Capitol Hill in trying to figure out ways for the U.S.-China relationship and to thwart China's aggressiveness. That's a big part of this as well.
Yeah, no question, Bret. Look, there's a China Select Committee that was established on a bipartisan basis. I support the work that the committee has been doing. I mean, look, China, is copied a lot of our playbook from decades and decades and decades of U.S. experience. What they're doing is they're going around the world, and where the U.S. is either leaving or contracting or finding ways to even one-up the U.S. is they're offering free money to these countries. They're offering to loan money for their projects. By the way, they bring in Chinese workers for these projects. They don't even help the economy or put anyone to work in these countries. And, Mike and I went on a CODEL together, a bipartisan CODEL that Speaker McCarthy led. And every country we went to, China was the one topic that came up universally. And so, look, they're a problem. They're going to be a problem not for the next year, the next 5 years. This is a generational problem that we're going to have with China. And Iranian oil is one piece to the puzzle there.
Let me just play this soundbite. This is from State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller about the Iranian sanctions. Take a listen.
We do continue to vigorously enforce our sanctions on Iran. We don't hesitate to take action against sanctions invaders. We've taken those actions numerous times in the world, and we regularly engage with countries and strongly discourage them from taking steps with respect to Iran that contravene U.S. sanctions.
Congressman Lawler, if there would not be a need for your legislation had that really been true, had the Iranian sanctions really be effective. It doesn't seem like they're either being enforced or are effective.
Well, I think, obviously, I agree. We need to strengthen the sanctions, and that's why we've introduced this legislation, because it's not working. But secondarily, to the point Jared made, China continues to be our greatest geopolitical foe. They are the most destabilizing force around the globe.
Last thing for both of you quickly, we've done this segment now for a long time, and there are more and more folks from both sides of the aisle coming up here to talk about this. For the people sitting at home and saying, hey, listen, this is rose-colored glasses, there's not a lot of bipartisanship in this country. For both of you to just weigh in about how you work across the aisle. Start with you, Congressman Moskowitz.
Well, thanks, Bret. I think that's a really important question because I think one of the things that the American people don't get to see is that there's actually a lot of people in Congress that would like to work together and find ways and issues to work together on. We don't, unfortunately, get a lot of publicity. That's why this show is so important.
You have to find opportunities. You have to be willing to do that. And I think Jared and I certainly show that it can be done, and we're willing to engage for the betterment of our country.
Well, we appreciate the time, and we will follow this issue and others. Thank you both.
Thank you.